a forbidden Skyline, a tiny gull-wing Mazda, a Corvette-powered Australian sedan, one of the greatest rally cars ever built, and most Americans wouldn't recognize it in a parking lot. These are 10 cars most Americans have never seen, and some of them barely feel real. Let's do this. You can be a hardcore car enthusiast in America and still have never laid eyes on some of the wildest machines ever built. Not because they're secret, not because they don't exist, but because America has its own bubble, and a huge amount of what makes the car world fascinating never crossed our borders. Rally monsters, forbidden JDM legends, a V8 Australian super sedan, and one tiny Japanese sports car with gull-wing doors that makes absolutely no sense, and is absolutely perfect for exactly that reason. These are 10 cars most Americans have never seen. And I promise you, by the end of this list, at least one of these is going to make you stop and say, "Wait, that's a real car?" Number 1. Nissan Skyline GT-R R34. Americans know the R34 from screens, not streets. You've seen it in video games. You've seen it in movies. You probably had a poster of it at some point. But here's the thing, most Americans have never actually seen one in real life. Not in a driveway. Not at a car show. Not even parked outside a dealership. It's one of the most famous cars in the world, and it's basically a ghost on US roads. The reason is a federal law called the 25-year import rule. Foreign cars can't be legally imported into the United States until they're at least 25 years old. The R34 Skyline GT-R was built from 1999 to 2002, which means only the very earliest examples are just now becoming eligible, and even those have been trickling in slowly. For most of the last 2 decades, legally owning an R34 in America was incredibly difficult, expensive, or both. So why does it matter so much? Because the R34 is genuinely extraordinary. It came with a twin-turbocharged 2.6-liter inline-6 engine, the legendary RB26DTT, that Nissan officially rated at 276 horsepower. Nobody believed that number. It was part of an informal agreement among Japanese automakers to keep advertised power figures down, and actual output was significantly higher. With modifications, these engines became almost limitless. The car also had an advanced all-wheel drive system that could split torque between the axles in real time, technology that was ahead of almost everything else on the market in 1999. It's famous for a reason. It's a legend for a reason. And if you've never seen one sitting in front of you with your own eyes, you're not alone. And somehow, the next car is even more unknown, because most Americans barely know the brand, let alone the model. Number 2. Renault Alpine A110. Imagine if France built its own answer to the Porsche Cayman, made it lighter, more focused, and arguably more fun to drive, and then never sold it in America. That's the Alpine A110. And most Americans have never heard of it. Alpine is Renault's performance brand, and when they revived the A110 in 2017, the automotive press basically lost its mind. Here was a modern sports car built around an old-school philosophy. Make it light, make it balanced, make it a pure driving experience. The car weighs around 2,400 pounds, featherweight for a modern sports car. The turbocharged 4-cylinder in the top version makes around 300 horsepower, and in something that light, it feels like twice that. Think of it this way. The A110 competes directly with the Porsche 718 Cayman. European car journalists regularly prefer it. And Alpine never officially sold the A110 in the United States. No US market version, no dealer network, nothing. Unless you've been deep in European automotive media, you've probably never even seen a photo of one. The original A110, back in the 1960s and 70s, was a dominant rally machine. The new one honors that DNA completely. It's one of the best driver's cars money can buy, and America has no idea it exists. If you thought that was obscure, what comes next is on a completely different level of, wait, that's a real car. Number 3. Mitsubishi Pajero Evolution. Imagine if Mitsubishi sold a street-legal Dakar race truck in America. They didn't, but they did sell it in Japan, and that car is the Pajero Evolution. This is exactly the kind of machine that makes people question reality when they first see it. The Dakar Rally is one of the most brutal motorsport events on the planet. It's a race across some of the most hostile terrain in the world. Sand dunes, mountain passes, river crossings, hundreds of miles per day through places where there are no roads. To build a car for Dakar, you need insane suspension travel, a powertrain that can take punishment for days, and the kind of structural integrity that most road cars couldn't dream of. Mitsubishi built the Pajero Evolution as a homologation special tied to its Dakar efforts, and the Pajero name went on to dominate the event. Then they took that same car, tamed it just enough to be street legal, and sold it to the public in Japan. The wide-body fenders, the long travel suspension, the specially developed 3.5-liter V6, all of it available at a dealership for people who wanted to drive a Dakar weapon to work on Monday. Not a single one was officially sold in the United States. If you showed most Americans a photo of this car, they'd assume it was a heavily modified show build, not a factory production vehicle. It looked wild straight from the dealer floor, and America never got to find out. Now this next car might be the most visually bizarre thing on the entire list, because Japan in the early 90s was doing some absolutely unhinged things with small cars. Number 4. Mazda Autozam AZ-1. This looks like someone shrunk a Lamborghini in the wash. The Autozam AZ-1 is a mid-engine Japanese K car with gull-wing doors, and most Americans have absolutely no idea that Mazda ever built anything like it. K cars are a uniquely Japanese concept, a category of ultra-small, lightweight vehicles designed to qualify for tax and insurance benefits. Most K cars are practical little boxes built for narrow city streets. But someone at Mazda asked a very different question. What if we built a tiny supercar? The AZ-1 has a turbocharged 3-cylinder engine sitting midship, right behind the driver, sending power to the rear wheels. The doors swing upward like a DeLorean. The entire car measures just over 130 inches long, shorter than most modern pickup truck beds, and weighs barely 1,500 pounds. It looks like a toy. It drives like a tiny supercar. And it carries a K car price tag. In Japan, these became instant cult objects. They're genuinely rare even there today. In America, they are essentially mythological. When Americans see photos for the first time, the reaction is almost always the same. They assume it's a concept car, a custom build, or a kit car. It is none of those things. It is a production vehicle from one of the most recognizable car brands in the world. And most Americans have never seen one. This makes the next car look almost sensible by comparison. Almost. Number 5. Ford Puma. Original, 1997 to 2001. Most Americans know the Ford Puma today as a small crossover SUV sold in Europe. But before that nameplate got recycled, there was a completely different car, and it was one of Ford's best driving machines of the late 1990s. The original Ford Puma was a compact sporty coupe, built on the Fiesta platform, but given a much sleeker, lower body. It weighed barely over 2,000 pounds, and the top engine was a 1.7-liter unit co-developed with Yamaha. In a car that light, those numbers translated into something genuinely quick and playful. European journalists consistently praised its handling as best in class for an affordable coupe of that era. Ford Europe won multiple awards with it. Americans never got it. If you showed someone on the street a photo of this car, they'd probably never guess it was a Ford. It doesn't look like something from a mainstream dealership, which is exactly why it belongs on this list, and exactly why most Americans have never seen one. But if the Ford was a hidden gem, the next car is a hidden masterpiece, with one of the greatest engine sounds ever recorded. Number 6. Alfa Romeo 156 GTA. This is one of the greatest forbidden sports sedans America never got. And if you've never heard a Busso V6 at full throttle, I genuinely feel sorry for you, because it is one of the best sounds an internal combustion engine has ever made. The Alfa Romeo 156 was already a strikingly beautiful car. Alfas have always had this flair for emotional, dramatic design, and the 156 was no exception. But the GTA version pushed the formula somewhere most manufacturers wouldn't go. Under the hood sat Alfa's 3.2-liter Busso V6, producing 247 horsepower, all sent to the front wheels. Front-wheel drive with nearly 250 horsepower is not a tame experience. It fights you. It demands your attention. But it rewards you with this mechanical, intense, very Italian chaos that is completely addictive. The GTA also came as a wagon. A Busso V6 Italian sports wagon. That's the whole pitch. Alfa had left the US market in the 1990s and wouldn't return officially for years. So while Europeans were quietly enjoying one of the most characterful sports sedans on the market, Americans had never heard of it. Most people who see one today wouldn't guess it was an Alfa. They definitely wouldn't guess it never made it to the US. The next car is even more invisible to Americans, and it might be the most decorated race car on this entire list. Number 7. Lancia Delta Integrale. This is one of the greatest rally cars ever built, and most Americans wouldn't recognize it in a parking lot. That is one of the more absurd facts in automotive history. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, the World Rally Championship was the most technically intense motorsport series on the planet. And Lancia, an Italian brand that most Americans have never heard of, dominated that era in a way that is almost hard to believe. The Delta Integrale won the WRC Manufacturers' Championship 6 consecutive times. 6 in a row. Nothing else came close. The road car was a slightly tamed version of the rally weapon. Turbocharged 2.0-liter engine, all-wheel drive, suspension tuned by people who spent their weekends watching these cars fly through forests at impossible speeds. The Evolution versions were among the most capable performance cars of their decade. And yet, in America, Lancia is basically invisible. The brand never cracked this market. The Delta Integrale never officially sold here. Bring it up at a car gathering in Italy, and you'll get nods and stories. Bring it up at a car show in Ohio, and people ask you how to spell it. It is one of the defining performance cars of its era, and America missed it entirely. And somehow, the next car is even more extreme. It's one thing to build a rally champion. It's another to build this. Number 8. Holden HSV GTSR W1. This thing makes no sense in the best possible way. It's basically a family sedan with the heart of a Corvette ZR1 and the attitude of a bar fight. And America never got a single one. To understand the GTSR W1, you need to know a little about Australian car culture. For decades, Australia had its own domestic car industry built around large, rear-wheel drive V8 sedans. Think of it as a parallel universe version of American muscle, except they put it in four-door family cars and called it normal. Holden was Australia's answer to General Motors. HSV, Holden Special Vehicles, was their performance division, the Australian equivalent of AMG or M Division. The GTSR W1 was their final, ultimate statement before Holden shut down Australian manufacturing in 2017. They did not go quietly. The W1 used a supercharged 6.2-liter LS9 V8, the same engine from the Chevrolet Corvette ZR1, producing 637 horsepower. In a four-door sedan, a car that could seat 5 people, carry groceries, and then humiliate supercars on the way home. Only 300 units were ever built. Not one was officially sold in the United States. This is one of the most powerful four-door cars ever put into production. It marks the end of an entire era of Australian automotive culture, and most Americans have never heard of it, let alone seen one in person. From Australia's biggest to Japan's most unexpected. The next one is a car most American Subaru fans don't even know exists. Number 9. Subaru Forester STI. Wait, before you say anything, not the regular Forester. The Forester STI. The one Subaru built for the Japanese domestic market and never sent to America. And it is exactly as wild as that sounds. Most Americans know the WRX STI. It's one of the most iconic performance cars Subaru ever built, and thankfully America did get that one. But the Forester STI took a completely different approach. Subaru took the performance DNA of the WRX STI, turbo power, sharper suspension, and rally-bred attitude, and stuffed it into what looked like a completely ordinary family SUV. This was not a styling package, not a badge upgrade. It was a proper performance machine wearing a disguise. The Forester STI had real STI suspension tuning, upgraded brakes, and genuine performance credentials wrapped in a body that most people would glance at and immediately forget. The ultimate sleeper vehicle. Looks like something you'd see in a school car park, drives like something you'd see at a rally stage. Japan kept it. America never got it. To this day, most American Subaru fans have no idea the Forester STI was ever a real production car. That's how completely off the radar this thing is over here. And we're saving the most unhinged one for last. Because nothing on this list prepares you for a mainstream hatchback with a V6 where the back seat should be. Number 10. Renault Clio V6. We're ending with something that should have been impossible. A front-wheel drive economy hatchback with a mid-mounted V6 engine, built by Renault. And it is one of the most unhinged, brilliant, genuinely wild production cars of the early 2000s. The Renault Clio V6 looks, at a glance, like a normal hot hatch. It has the body of a Clio, the proportions of a Clio. But then you look where the back seats should be, and instead there is a 3.0-liter V6 mounted where the rear seats should be, driving the rear wheels in a car barely bigger than a modern Mini. The back doors are fake. They don't open. The interior behind the driver is entirely engine. The handling was described by automotive journalists as somewhere between thrilling and terrifying. The mid-engine layout meant the car would rotate aggressively in corners, and it demanded serious respect from the driver. But it was also one of the most memorable, distinctive, and purely entertaining cars produced in that entire era. It looked like something sensible. It drove like something from another planet. Renault never officially exported the Clio V6 to the United States. It remains almost completely unknown to the American mainstream. Most people who see one for the first time assume it's a race car or a custom build. It is a production car from a mainstream manufacturer, with a V6 where your rear passenger should be, sold to the public. Just not here. So which one got you? The Pajero Evo, the Gullwing Mazda, the Australian Corvette sedan, or that Clio with a V6 where the back seat should be? Drop it in the comments. And if you want more hidden gems from the global car world, hit subscribe, because the next list gets even weirder.